The question is simple. Have any of the systems on my network been compromised? The answer is harder than it should be. Enter AI Hunter. Active Countermeasures has automated and streamlined techniques used by the best pen testers and threat hunters in the industry to create AI Hunter, a network threat hunting solution that does the first pass of a hunt for you to identify systems that are most likely to be compromised and scores the results on a scale from 0 to 100. You can then research those systems in depth with AI Hunter. Focus your valuable time on the systems that need your expertise with AI Hunter. Sign up for a personal demo today at securityweekly.com/ACM.
Welcome back to Security and Compliance Weekly. I am your host, Matt Alderman, joined by Scott Lyons and Josh Marpet. Join us at InfoSec World 2020, March 30th to April 1st, 2020 at the Disney Contemporary Resort. Security Weekly listeners save 15% off the InfoSec World Main Conference or World Pass. Visit securityweekly.com/ISW 2020 and click the registration button to register with our discount code. Also, our next webcast is tomorrow with Cecilia Marnier, RSA Program Director of Innovation and Scholars, where we will be discussing Sandbox, Innovation Sandbox, Launchpad, Security Scholar, and their how-to seminar for innovators and entrepreneurs. You can register for the upcoming webcast by visiting securityweekly.com, select the webcast drop-down, and click the registration tab. Gentlemen, we have not done news in a number of weeks. We've had a couple dual interviews the past few weeks. We had a big break for Christmas and New Year's. So where do you guys want to start?
With the news?
Yes.
All right, let's.
Where do you want to start? You're doing. Oh. You've got stuff in here about current Bitcoin currencies, and there's all kinds of news in here. Where do we start?
It's starting out. I'm sorry, Josh. I have to. Starting out, I think it should be said that today is the last day for Windows 7. Yay! Crap.
Oh, that's true. It's end of life for Windows 7 today.
Yeah, today. Unfortunately, there's over 400 million devices that are still running Windows 7. So getting everybody to move over, it's going to be a complete challenge. You
realize how many cakes have been bought by cyber criminals today? Going, no more security updates, they're mine.
Oh, how long did it take everybody to migrate off of XP? I mean, think of that debacle. You've got nation states paying Microsoft because who?
Mark Hardy still runs a Windows XP laptop. Last I talked to him, he did. He has it customized just for him, so he still has a Windows XP laptop. Swear to God.
Man.
Windows 7 is what forced me to get off of Windows and go to the Mac 100%. I just
really what? From
7 to 8 to 10, I just couldn't handle it anymore. I was just done. That was the turning point for me to become 100% Mac guy. Now I do have this Windows 10 box here that does this broadcast because Skype runs better on Windows, but that's my only exception now. Everything else is Apple.
I have a Chromebook and a Windows 10 laptop and several Linux devices. And although the Linux devices are where I'm most comfortable these days, honestly, I just find dealing with other people that are Windows first people, I just use the Windows box more than anything else. Besides, the games run better on it, let's be honest. And that's what I use to fantasize about not dealing with them for a little while.
This all goes towards, I'm sorry for cutting you off, Josh, I apologize, but this all goes towards the first article that we're going to talk about, right? The threat landscape is always changing, right? Which means more often than not, organizations have compliance people, right? Not just officers, but people that deal with burnout on a daily basis, not only trying to keep up with what the market is doing, but also with internally what's going on with the business, right? So the first article, we'll just dive right into it, is coming out of the Compliance and Ethics blog about compliance officer burnout, right? And in here, it's talking about the many hats that compliance people, compliance critters, compliance officers, right, wear on a daily basis, from HR to clinical director to privacy officer to marketing, right? So how do you deal with burnout, especially in the job place, dealing with an ever shifting landscape?
And then you throw a Windows 7 migration in the middle of that. Oh my gosh, that's it. Tipping point.
Oh, you poor
You know?
bastard. Can you imagine some compliance officer going, boss, we have those 1,000 Windows 7 machines I've been telling you about for like a year and a half now? Well, yeah. Well, we're not getting security updates as of today. So we just, maybe we should migrate them now. Oh, can you have it done by, Tuesday?
Yeah.
And
Well,
the IT team is freaking out about that because now they've got 1,000 Windows 7 boxes to migrate by Tuesday.
Yeah.
a lot
Scott,
of times when we're working with companies and organizations, we try to push the theory of the gold disk, right? One image across all machines that you know what the ins and outs are. So if there's malcode that's put on it or somebody changes something within the image, right? It's easy to understand that change, right? And then smack them upside the head and say, no, this didn't go through change control, and all of those processes happen, right? But when you're dealing with a migration, like Josh was saying, on a mass scale, right, and trying to understand how do you stay ahead of all of this, it's a real headache. You've got time, money, budget, and resources that are just out the window.
Yeah. So I thought you were going to go to the risk assessment story, because in that story, it talks about potential risk indicators, right? So on our topic of Windows 7, right, that's a new potential risk indicator because now I have an unsupported operating system sitting in my environment. And how does that dynamically change my risk scores for me to figure out how to address something like a Windows 7 end of life, right? And so that's where I thought you were going to go. You went to burnout instead, but that's okay. Because what I think this article is trying to get across is that our risk assessments can't be static once a year assessments. Here we are on January 14th. I might be in the middle of my annual risk assessment. I might have done it in Q4 to get ready for 2020. And now you have this new potential risk indicator that needs to be dynamically updated in my overall models for me to understand, should I do something about this? And I thought this article was really interesting on the concept we've talked about, which is not only risk assessment, but how do you do risk assessment dynamically as different risk indicators change so that I know I'm prioritizing the right activities for my security and compliance programs.
You've got a really good point there, and it's not just the fluidity of risk. It's also about regulatory changes, because one of our other articles is about a new California privacy law that's coming out. It's about the fact that code changes, so your risk changes as your day goes on, as your year goes on. Just as security went from a once-a-year pen test, a once-a-quarter vuln scan, a once of this, a once of that, it's point-in-time stuff, to an ongoing integrated form and part of your business processes, so too is compliance going down that same road. And we've been talking about this for, God, years now. But it's really starting to become real to people.
It's funny because earlier on segment 1, we were talking about roadblocks, right? Roadblockers, right? And when you're dealing with point-in-time assessments, that is a virtual roadblocker, right? Versus a continuous rolling assessment, which is an enabler, right? So when companies and organizations are trying to understand what kind of compliance officer they need, right? They can either do it in-house or they can have a virtual compliance officer, but either way, both of them need to be able to diagnose who in the organization can get the data that they need so that they can keep the organization compliant, right? So it's almost a way to tie it all together, you know?
Well, and then that leads into the skills for the compliance professional for the 2020s, right? Because if you're out looking for that compliance officer or any compliance resource, right, this article digs into part of what you just talked about, Scott, which was, what are some of those skills you're looking for? And this article lays out some very interesting ones, be creative, adapting to thrive, become tech savvy, build your personal brand, right? If you're trying to negotiate and work your way through an organization and you're dealing with all these different personalities, there's a level of communication skills. There's a level of understanding the technology behind it. there's lots of different things you're going to have to do to kind of get the answers you need to be successful in that role. This article kind of lists out a number of those potential skills.
And those skills are fantastically useful in any role. Be tech savvy, build your personal brand, adapt, create, thrive under a changing environment. I don't care if you're in security. I don't care if you're in compliance. Hell, I don't care if you're in accounting. Those are good skills. And realistically, it's what you need in this modern era. You're not just doing your very narrow job description. You have to continuously adapt. Maybe in a huge, huge company, you're only doing exactly what you're supposed to. But I think all of us are seeing, as the years have gone on from the 70s until the 20 teens, that jobs change. And as people get laid off or entire teams get laid off and we take their tasks on, you have to change as well. And if you refuse to change, you'll be left behind. So those skills right there are fantastic. And they roll into this other one about the board's role in guarding corporate reputation, because the board is becoming more and more involved in the everyday aspects of a company. And so the board is changing, even all the way up there to the board of directors is changing what they do on a regular basis. It's not just long-term vision. It's reputational risk. It's helping to define short-term vision as well, working with the executives, all sorts of stuff like that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think one of the themes we're going to see as we move into 2020 and beyond is aspects of privacy, ethics, being honest about what we're doing with people's data. I mean, I think, we're going to talk CCPA here in a little bit because obviously it went into full effect on January 1st. But what this means is that as a company dealing with customer data, I need to have some ethical practices in place. I need to have some privacy practices in place. I need to make sure I'm communicating to my customers in an open and honest way about what we're doing with their data. And this is going to trickle not only to the security and compliance resources, it's going to trickle all the way up to the board, right? And these are things that we're going to start to see play out over the next decade, because privacy is taking a much front and center focus now as we continue to move forward. This is going to become one of those big issues that really will impact how we work in our fields, I think, going forward.
Oh, it's so much more than that. There's in the last story about the stories of cyber insurance, they say that cyber is soon going to cost insurers more than natural disasters. I mean, you consider Katrina and Harvey and Maria and name one, you know what I'm talking about. The fact that they think that cyber is going to cost insurers more than those natural disasters means that the price of not doing protecting privacy rights, protecting data, protecting your assets, taking care of your things, working with the regulators, making sure you're following your regulatory needs, it's going to be very expensive. And it's going to drive this whole industry and this whole movement from the point in time to an ongoing. It's going to drive it as part of a business need and a business imperative. It's going to drive it hugely. And all the things we're talking about are really pulling together in a big sort of like everything's pushing compliance and cybersecurity and information security to significantly be more important and more part of what people talk about and do and deal with. Did that make sense?
So
yeah, I mean, cyber insurance.
What I find really funny. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, cyber insurance still has a lot of maturity to go. We talked a little bit about this in the first segment, but there's still a lot of maturity here, right? There's still a lot of data needed to drive the actuarial tables to really figure out how to price this stuff. And hopefully over time, the controls they ask about and the controls that are actually getting implemented really tie together with policy. So I think there's a level of maturity here. But to your point, we've already seen aspects of the cyber insurance trend when it came to some of the ransomware cases in 2019. Those are not going to go away, and that market's going to continue to grow. I think it'll be interesting to see how it matures as part of how policies are priced and delivered and exclusions they put in those policies going forward based on how you're actually doing from a security and compliance perspective. Because I don't think they're that closely aligned yet.
That's
so one of the one of the articles that I've thrown up into the stories is about at CES how Facebook is claiming that they are just as good on privacy as Apple, right? And recently, I have to go and find the article, but I saw somewhere about Cambridge Analytica coming under fire about how they use data again. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, I also saw an article, I have to go find it, about how the iOS on Apple devices with the new privacy features is actually reshaping the way that data is collected and used. You know, one of
Here's
the
why. Here's
ahead.
why they're making the comparison, because you guys threw the article in here why California's CCPA law doesn't really impact Google or Facebook. And the reason is they're making this claim is because they're considered a first-party relationship. See, both Apple and Facebook are really first-party relationships. They're collecting the data from you directly. So they know a lot of information about you because we're giving it to you. We're giving it to them, right? We sign in to Facebook with our phone. Guess what? They know what device we're using, right? And so that's why Facebook's making this claim. And it actually has some protections in the CCPA law that first-party relationships have certain kind of like privileges or rights that second and third, fourth party relationships don't, right? And so there's all this, fanfare about how CCPA is going to reel in the Googles and the Facebooks and the Apples of the world. In reality, it's not, because they're all first-party relationship providers, which I thought was this really interesting kind of almost like loophole in the law that makes it easier for the big tech to continue to do what they're doing. It's actually going to punish all the people downstream more than anything else. So there's some of these interesting discussions. But look, Facebook had, from a privacy perspective, they had a horrible 2019. And as far as I can tell, there is no interest in that executive structure to really protect customer privacy.
Well, I mean, they get paid to not. So
Right.
kind of bad. It's count. What is it? Incentivized, malicious incentivization. I forget the word, but it's a horrible incentivization for them.
Yes. And we know what the $5 billion fine did. It was nothing. It was a drop in the bucket for them, right? It had no impact, and it will have no impact on how they deal with privacy going forward. And CCPA is not going to put enough restrictions on it. GDPR might, but none of those privacy regulations have really enough teeth, I don't think yet, to really change what I think Facebook will continue to do, personally.
So
which is why I don't have an account.
Well,
Oh, that's why I was wondering. I was looking for you a few minutes ago.
Nope, I'm not there.
So should a company draft a compliance mission statement that should cover all of these individual points?
Well, maybe. I mean, that is the article that's out there, right? But it talks about how do you draft that mission statement. And I think it is important for people to understand what is that mission statement from a compliance perspective. Is privacy in or out? Is that a key part of your compliance mission statement or not? I think that's going to vary company to company, gentlemen.
Well,
but what they're talking about is how do you wrap around a mission statement that you can now align and focus with the rest of your team organization so everybody's on the same page? Because those don't really...
Matt, I'm going to step on you for a second. I think we need to go back to first principles. A company should have core values. They should have a corporate mission statement. As part of that, the compliance statement should refer back to that. Everything should expand out of their core values. If your core values are consumer privacy or customer data privacy or protecting our customers, managing our customers, working with our customers, then the privacy of their data should be inherent to your company. I would posit that Facebook's actual core values, or any company that relies on consumer data to function, protecting their customers' data is not one of their core values. Or in as much as protecting customer data so they can use it better, okay, maybe. But protecting the customer's right to their data is not necessarily their core value.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't disagree with you, right? I mean, there should be a set of goals that an organization aligns to, and a set of values that they aspire to be, and therefore different objectives for not only your compliance program, but also controls that you want to implement from a security perspective should align to that whole structure, right?
Exactly.
Right.
And,
But I'm not sure that everybody gets to that level of mapping, because I think it's kind of difficult. But in theory, you're right, Josh. That's how it should be. But if your
but it's
core
not
values
difficult.
are I'm going to sell customer data because that's my revenue model, then the compliance and security controls kind of go out the window in that particular case.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
but that's
and
the point.
there's also brand impact and reputation that needs to be taken into account. Sorry, Josh, go ahead.
That's okay. But I mean, but the point is, it's not that difficult to map to core values. You say, hey, our core values are the protection of customer data, because without it, we're reputationally worthless. And you're never going to give it away or sell it or whatever, put it at risk, shall we say. So, but if your core values are honesty, integrity, transparency, etc., then everything you do will map back to that. And everything should map back to your core values. And the fact that you say, well, it's not that easy, I disagree. It's actually very easy if you thought about it. We've changed our core values a couple of times because we realized as we do business that what we do didn't match the core values and we needed to align them correctly. But we've stuck to them very, very strongly. Several of them we've had since day one. So, and we map back to everything we do.
Yeah, if you're not putting in very strong core values from the gate, you, sir, get a squawk of the chicken. What's wrong with you? I mean, it's very easy to drive culture and drive reputation based on core values. That really should be a pillar of any business across the board.
Scott, did you actually squawk the chicken?
He did.
I did. Oh, I did.
All right. So if Facebook gets into the currency game, are you going to trust them or not trust them based on their previous history?
Huh. Okay.
Is this why big tech's getting into finance? Because they see this other avenue to make money? But do you trust some of the big tech guys to do this when you know they're not doing the basics to protect my privacy, and you want to trust them for coins and bitcoins and all this other stuff?
So really quickly, I'm going to explain that actually it's something that's inevitable. PSD2 is a compliance regime in Europe where they've mandated that every bank open up an API for customer data to third parties. So Facebook, the big ones, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, and Google have all applied for the rights, licenses, whatever you call it, certifications to be a financial institution in Europe and in America. Apple now has a credit card in America. Facebook has Libra, their currency, albeit everybody practically is pulled out of it. All of these guys, Google Pay, all of these guys, all of these big tech giants have done things to make themselves financial institutions. And in Europe, they're going to be the face of your bank. You're going to log into your bank through Facebook. Who knows that the Apple card is actually, I believe, a Barclays card? Okay.
Yeah, but technically speaking, you already do with Facebook Pay.
Right. So the whole point is that these are already tech giants and already millions of people. How many people do you know use Apple Pay? Like a lot of people. Scott, you use it, right?
Only when forced to, at gunpoint. Okay.
But I mean, how many times? I'm not asking. Never mind. Anyway, so
don't go there.
the point is that the tech giants are already financial institutions, and I have to imagine that they're collecting transaction data to advertise to you even more effectively, because now they can. They're required to keep the transaction data so that they can make sure that nothing fraudulent happens. They're protecting your information.
Of course they are. I so trust Apple Pay. That's why I don't use it.
I don't use it either.
I don't. I'm just gonna keep my card, right? I'm okay. I'll be old fashioned. I don't need to pay with my phone. I'll carry a wallet and I'll pull the piece of plastic out and I'll stick it into the machine. I'm good. I don't need anybody else to do it for me.
Well, you're old fashioned. Right, I actually do use my phone to pay for things. I have a thing on the back of my phone with all my credit cards in it. So I use my phone to pay for things, but I just pulling the card out to.
Right, but if you lose your card or you want to put your card up physically, Apple Pay is an okay substitute until it gets broken, right? And we haven't seen anything in mainstream media or the underground, right, where Apple Pay in its inception has been broken, right? So
yeah, and I trust Apple a lot more to protect that data than I do Facebook, right? I just do. I think Apple does a much better job of protecting data, and I think they take security and privacy a lot more seriously than a Facebook. And so of the ones, yeah, I would probably trust Apple a little more. But Facebook, no, thank you.
Well done. Well done.
All right. Have you guys had enough? Are we good for this week?
We could go on with this for hours. And you know what? At some event, we need to do this for hours.
Yeah.
Okay, for now.
Well, we'll all be together at RSA conference, so we'll try to do it then. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me.
InfoSec World.
Yeah, well, that's the second one. RSA conference first, then InfoSec World. We'll do it twice. We'll be good. Thank you, gentlemen. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you next week on Security and Compliance Weekly.